Let's fix your blood pressure today, give you an entire complete program of how to do it naturally and effectively. My name is Dr. Story. I've been a chiropractor for over 26 years. I'm going to give you realistic advice based on my experience and based on the scientific literature. I'm going to give you real information, not ideal information. Sometimes you see things on YouTube that you just think to yourself, there's no way anybody can do that. You can't spend 24 hours a day focusing on that one thing. I'm going to give you stuff that I give my patients. So when patients have health problems and we try to solve these problems naturally without drugs, there's kind of a step-by-step program that I follow and that I give to patients who are trying to help their own blood pressure by themselves or get off medication, lose weight, all these different things. So what I want you to do is I want you to get a pen and paper handy, take notes on this video because we're going to cover the complete program. It's going to be a little bit longer than my normal videos, but I'm going to make it worth it for you so that you get your blood pressure under control. Now I know this is overwhelming. I know it's scary. I know blood pressure has a lot of risks. I'm assuming that you already know that you have high blood pressure. You may already be on medications and you're trying to help yourself naturally at home. So that's what this program is for. We're going to cover 6 individual topics. We are going to cover exercise and which exercises are you supposed to do and which exercises you may need to stay away from if you have high blood pressure. We're going to cover number 2, the diet. Which diet seems to be the most effective for high blood pressure? What diet should you choose? Because there's a lot of diets out there. Number 3, we're going to cover some things that you can do to instantly lower your blood pressure if you're having a blood pressure emergency. There are a lot of things that you can do that will have immediate effects on your blood pressure and if practiced over a long period of time can have long-term effects, but it's that immediate effect that we're looking for. Number 4, we are going to cover supplements that you can take that will assist you and strengthen your body internally so that you can lower your blood pressure. Number 5, we're going to cover some mental issues that contribute to high blood pressure. This is very, very important because most people overlook this one thing, and for many people can be the biggest contributing factor in their high blood pressure. The final thing that we're going to cover, that's number 6, are special foods that have a significant impact on your blood pressure. So let's just get into it. So let's get into number 1, and that is exercise. So the easiest thing to do when you have high blood pressure is to start some type of exercise program. And the reason I say that this is the easiest is because the other things that I'm going to talk to you about in this video, those things take a wee bit more effort. The easiest thing to do is to start an exercise program, unless you're not into exercise. But the good news is I'm going to help you with this because this can actually be quite a bit of fun if you can find ways to do it. So the first is, of all the different exercises that you can do some type of cardiovascular exercise, such as swimming, walking, treadmills. You can use ellipticals, you can use bicycles, you can use rowing. Those are exercises that we could put on one category, and if we want to classify those as cardiovascular exercises, we can, and we can contrast them with other exercises that are more weightlifting style types of exercises. Think of CrossFit, or think of heavy powerlifting, or going into the gym and lifting heavy weights and things of that nature. Those are exercises that we want to try to avoid with high blood pressure. Now let me explain why. Because we're going to contrast this with this and its effect on your cardiovascular system. So here's what you need to know. When you exercise extremely hard and you're lifting heavy weights, you have 2 numbers, of course, with your blood pressure. The first number, which is the systolic, and the second number, which is the diastolic. When you lift heavy weights for a temporary period of time, the first number can go way up. And I have videos on my YouTube channel where I show what actually happens to your blood pressure when you do heavy weightlifting or some type of aggressive exercise, where I take my blood pressure during that exercise. So the first number can go really super high. Now it's temporary, but you get this spike where the systolic number goes up significantly, and then when you're done with the weightlifting, it drops. And the reason why this occurs is because for many people, when you're straining at lifting heavy weights, that actually increases the first number. It doesn't really have much of an effect on the second number, but it's that first number that increases the pressure to a lot. That can be dangerous for some people that already have weakened blood vessels. So you don't want to be doing that. And I know there's a lot of people that say you should do high intensity interval training. And high intensity interval training is essentially weightlifting when you think about it, because high intensity interval training means you're doing a high intensity at various intervals. Well, if you're weightlifting and lifting heavy and your blood pressure is going up and then you have a rest period, that can be considered high intensity interval training. However, for many people, what they actually mean by high intensity interval training is, for example, running really fast for 30 seconds and then resting for 20 seconds, running really fast for 30 seconds and then resting for 20 seconds, something of that nature. But again, the problem with this is that you're increasing the systolic number significantly at various intervals. And for someone who has high blood pressure who doesn't normally exercise, this is just way too much for their body. Now, in contrast to that, what we would want to do is some type of cardiovascular training. Now, the purpose of cardiovascular training is to strengthen our cardiovascular system, which is the blood pressure. So what a cardiovascular exercise does, and we're going to use walking as an example, is your heart rate will be a certain number. Let's say your heart rate is 70 beats per minute. And what will happen is when you start walking, your heart rate will increase to a certain level. Let's say now it's at 110. Well, now your blood pressure might go up a wee bit, but not as much as with weightlifting. And what you're going to do is during that duration, let's say you walk for 20 minutes, that heart rate and blood pressure will stay the same throughout the exercise. It won't have these peaks and valleys. That's very important because that style of exercise actually strengthens your blood vessels and strengthens your heart and will not have a negative effect on your blood pressure. In other words, you're not going to have a blood pressure emergency when doing cardiovascular exercise. So let's just assume for a second that you do no cardiovascular exercise whatsoever right now. In fact, you don't like cardiovascular exercise. You don't want to go to the gym. The simplest solution for you for that type of situation would be to start walking. Now, why do I say that? Number one, bicycles can cost anywhere from $1,000 to $12,000. A gym membership can cost a certain amount of money per month, whether you go or not. A rowing machine costs money, a treadmill costs money, an elliptical machine costs money. But walking generally is free for most people. All you need is a pair of shoes, and even then you don't even need a pair of shoes. It's not required depending on where you are. Let's say you just don't like to exercise at all. Where should you start? What I recommend to patients is to just start every single day, 7 days a week. You get up in the morning, 10 minutes early, and you try to go for a walk. You go out your door and you just leave the house and you just go that way for a period of time, and you try to time it. And what you would do is you would say, try to walk away from your house in a direction, north, south, west, east, doesn't matter, for 5 minutes. And once the timer goes off after 5 minutes, you just turn around and come back. So you start with 10 minutes. Most people are agreeable to this, and this is why I said in the beginning that this is the simplest thing to do. So 10 minutes of exercise is not asking much per day, but over a period of a week, it's actually 70 minutes of exercise. Now you can make it more interesting by going with someone else and having conversation. You can go by yourself and just be within your thoughts. You can listen to music, but ultimately that's where you want to start, is about 10 minutes. Now, if you're so out of shape you can't last 10 minutes, and there are people that cannot last 10 minutes, then go that way for 3 minutes and try to come back. But you do want to build up so that you can do about 10 minutes of exercise every day. So as that becomes easier as time goes on, we want to try to make it interesting and make it fun. So you listen to music, you go with someone else, you find a partner that you can go with, and you try to increase the time. So you would build up to 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 25 minutes, 30. Ultimately, if you can build up to 30 minutes a day, you're doing extremely well. It would be nice, of course, if you could do it an hour a day. 7 hours a week of exercise, cardiovascular, could make you ultimately a rock star. Now, I know that's a lot to ask of people, but 30 minutes a day on some days, 20 minutes a day on other days, and occasionally doing an hour could be reasonable. If you don't have time to do that, everyone has some day that they're not working, maybe a Saturday, maybe a Sunday, that you can walk for an hour a day. And the great thing about it is once you get up to that level, like I said, you're becoming a rock star. You can make it more interesting by going to different places. You don't always have to leave your house. You can do a destination walk. You can do a hike. You can be out in nature. There's lots of places to walk that it could be a lot more interesting. And if you go with a friend or a spouse or a girlfriend or a boyfriend, hopefully you don't have all of those there all at once. That can get messy. You can go out and have a great time walking for an hour. So whether you're cycling, rowing, swimming, running, walking, hiking, if you can do about 7 hours a week, wow, you've done amazing. But if you only do 3.5 hours that week, that still is pretty significant. And you'd be surprised. You should take your blood pressure before you start this type of program, and then do it for 8 weeks and see what your blood pressure is on average afterwards. Just by doing walking and cardiovascular exercise, you'd be shocked at how it'll affect your blood pressure. Number 2, diet. This is a big one. Now let me start off by saying this. The diet is probably the most controversial thing when it comes to blood pressure. And the reason why is naturally when you're trying to solve a blood pressure problem, there are many causes. And for a lot of people, they may never discover the cause of their blood pressure, but certainly an attempt to change your diet might make a difference. Some people it's a big difference, some people it makes no difference at all. There is a long history since the 1900s of trying to change the diet to affect blood pressure with varying degrees of results. And let me just cut to the chase and tell you, I have found that dealing with patients, the easiest diet, the least restrictive of all the diets that seems to have an effect on blood pressure and clearly has the most amount of research in the literature is the Mediterranean diet. And the reason I say this is because it seems to be the diet that most people can follow. If you have a different diet, hang with me, because I'm going to discuss all the varying degrees of diets and their pros and cons. But hear me out on this one. The reason I say the Mediterranean diet is because it is the least restrictive. You can basically eat most foods and account for most foods. If you have a social life, if you have friends, if you go to restaurants, it seems to be that you can find something that is on the menu. And for most people, when they go shopping for food, it's just the easiest stuff to buy. The second thing regarding the Mediterranean diet is for most cultures, it seems to be that there's always available food. If you only eat, for example, avocados and steak, then there are some places where that's hard to find. But let's go over what the Mediterranean diet is and why it seems to work, and then we'll cover the other diets. So the Mediterranean diet, when you look at your plate, should consist of extremely colorful and varied vegetables. Think of 80% of the plate as full of vegetables. It's got lots of olive oil, you can have avocados, you can have varying degrees of nuts. And then as a side note, 20% of the plate will consist of some type of animal product like fish, chicken. You could have beef occasionally. And that seems to be the easiest. So when you look at your plate, you want to emphasize the vegetables. The protein or the animal product is the side note. Now that conflicts extremely the opposite with when you think of the average American diet, which is where I'm located, where the majority of the meal is the meat, and then for the vegetable, we actually even just call it the side salad. It's a different way of thinking about your diet. Let's do this. Let's go fully extreme one way and fully extreme the other. Let's say that you want to go on a diet and you want to go full vegan. You don't want to eat any animal products. You don't want to eat any fats. You want to be purely plant-based, and then you want to limit the amount of time that you're going to eat to a very small window. Let's say 1 hour or 4 hours within that time. So you're going to do intermittent fasting. You're going to do a plant-based vegan diet with no fats and no animal products whatsoever. Would this work to lower your blood pressure? The answer is yes, with a small however. It depends what you were doing before. If you were eating McDonald's and chicken tenders, and you were eating a high fat, high protein, highly processed, fried foods type of diet, and then you went to that, you would notice significant changes in your body. You'd become a convert. But let's say you were eating that same diet and then you went to a carnivore diet where you eat from nose to tail only animals, you don't eat any vegetables, you don't eat any fruits, that's all you eat is animal, and you eat the entire animal. What would happen to your blood pressure? It would probably significantly go down if your diet was previously fully processed, fully high fats, hydrogenated oils, and things of that nature. With the two extreme diets, what most people notice is they lower their blood pressure, they lower their cholesterol, they lower their blood sugar, they lose weight, they feel better, because it's an issue of extremes. If you go from one extreme to the other, you're going to notice a difference. You're going to notice less of a difference if you go from a good vegetarian diet to a vegan diet, because the margins are smaller. You really have to fall in love with the diet and believe in the diet to follow the diet, because there's no point of changing your diet to lower your blood pressure if you can only follow that diet for 3 days. So if you look at an intermittent fasting, plant-based, vegan diet, or lifestyle, as they call it, and you just say to yourself, I don't think I can do that, then maybe that diet isn't right for you, despite the fact that it may actually lower your blood pressure. So there's that. There's a vegetarian diet. There's eating whatever you want but intermittent fasting types of diets. There are just calories in, calories out diet, where you just don't care what you eat, you just reduce the amount of calories that you're eating per day. That works too, by the way. There's a keto diet. There's a carnivore diet. There's the Atkins diet. There's the zone diet. And even within those diets, you can do, again, more extreme by doing an intermittent fasting diet. You can just fast, do water fasts. Ultimately, though, the diet that you're going to follow is something that you're going to have to do for the rest of your life. Why not just pick, and this is just in my humble opinion, because when I recommend to patients, if I'm going to recommend them to do something extreme and they're not going to do it, I'm just wasting my breath and wasting their time. We've got to figure out what type of diet a person can actually follow and follow for the rest of their life. So number 3, let's cover the daily breathing. Now at the end of this video, I'm going to put a link. There's going to be a box at the bottom that shows you the details about the breathing. Here's the important thing about the breathing. The breathing is something that can significantly lower your blood pressure, and it works for many people, and it works within minutes. So if you're having a blood pressure problem or you're feeling extremely stressed, this breathing technique works wonders. The challenge with the breathing is there's a lot of confusion as to what type of breathing would work best, as well as the long-term effects of the breathing. So we're going to cover that in detail right now. Now the biggest thing about the breathing is this, that the breathing really will show you whether stress has an effect on your blood pressure, and for many people it does. And what I'm talking about is on a daily basis, 7 days a week, you literally just take about 5 minutes and do deep breathing exercises. You're not hyperventilating, you're doing slow, controlled, deep breaths. Ideally, you would breathe in through the nose and out through the mouth. Many people get this wrong, and they actually stress out over it simply because they're worried too much about which nostril they should be breathing in, whether they should breathe in through their nose or out through their nose, in through their mouth or out through their mouth. It almost doesn't matter, because when you have one person who espouses this type of breathing, you have another person who espouses that type of breathing, yet both of them get the same results. So don't stress so much over which nostril you're supposed to use, or whether you're supposed to blow out with your mouth or a count of 4 or box breathing. It almost doesn't matter. I'm going to tell you what I have found seems to be the easiest for most of my patients to understand. They find it beneficial. So I'm going to share that with you. And it's breathing in through the nose and out through the mouth. Why breathe in through the nose? The reason why is because when you inhale through the nose, your body will produce something called nitric oxide. And nitric oxide is a gas that helps dilate and relax our blood vessels. When our blood vessels are stiff and stressed, blood pressure goes up. When you relax the blood vessels, blood pressure goes down. So it's almost that easy. So you inhale through the nose, exhale through the mouth. Again, I'll have a video at the end. But when you do this, it's almost like hitting Control Alternate Delete on your computer. It is resetting your stress levels. It's resetting your blood pressure. You're going to lower your cortisol levels. You're just going to feel better and be relaxed after doing the breathing. So the quick tutorial is this. You're going to be sitting in a chair, nice and relaxed. You're going to breathe in through your nose and let the air out in a nice, relaxed fashion. Now the question becomes, should you breathe with your belly or should you breathe with your chest? The answer is you should do both. Don't restrict your chest from moving. Many people stress so much about trying to breathe through their belly that they actually create tension by restricting your chest cavity. Your chest has muscles in it that are important for breathing called intercostal muscles. They're the muscles in between the ribs. And these muscles are designed to move your rib cage so that it creates a negative pressure so that you can inhale deeper. Go ahead and use those muscles. Those are important. Likewise, you don't want to just breathe with your neck in a stressed fashion. Breathe entirely with your belly and your chest all at once. And the question is, how often should you do this? Every single day, 7 days a week, for the rest of your life. And if you do that, what are the long-term effects? Now, there's only one guy ever, and it was on YouTube. It wasn't one of my patients that tried to argue and didn't agree with this. But long-term deep breathing exercises has a short-term effect. That is true. but it also has a long-term effect if practiced long-term. And I use the analogy of brushing your teeth. So if you were to brush your teeth are clean, right? Well, in a way, they are. But it's only temporary, because as the day goes by, your body, because if you mouth breathe, your body will start to accumulate bacteria in it. The second thing is, eventually you're going to eat. So if you brush your teeth and you assume your teeth are clean, they're not clean forever. Eventually you're going to eat something, right? Hopefully. And now your teeth are dirty again. So what do? You brush your teeth again. Now, if you were to never brush your teeth, then your dental health would go downhill. But if you brush your teeth every day, twice a day, hopefully. All right, let's talk about number 4, supplements. There are a number of supplements that can actually help you and assist you in lowering your blood pressure. Now, let me say this, guys. Here's the important thing, that it's not the supplements that are going to lower your blood pressure. It's everything else. These are supplemental. That's what it means to be a supplement. You should not be using supplements as your primary way to lower blood pressure and then throwing everything else out the window. Make sure that you're using supplements appropriately, but supplements can make an amazing difference. So let me give you a list of supplements that actually lower your blood pressure. Of all the supplements that I'm going to mention, the one that has the biggest effect is magnesium. And I'll put links down below for all the supplements in the description area. So if you want to see which supplements I actually take and which ones I recommend to my patients, you can do so. If you want to use others, I'm totally cool with that. That's fine. But magnesium, you want to be taking about 400 milligrams of magnesium every single day. The reason why I take supplements is because sometimes our diet is not perfect. Sometimes we're not getting the nutrients in our food. And so it's just, again, a supplemental thing that you can do. The best time to take the magnesium supplements is at nighttime with a little bit of food. And the reason why is because magnesium will help soften the blood vessels, relax them, relax the inner lining, the smooth muscle within the blood vessel. However, it also has a calming and relaxing effect. So if you take magnesium at nighttime, it actually will help you sleep. The next supplement is vitamin D. Vitamin D has a very positive effect on lowering your blood pressure. Depending on your blood values, a little tiny pill is about 5,000 IUs of vitamin D, and that's sufficient for most people. If you're significantly deficient in vitamin D, then what I would recommend is to get out into the sun for 15 minutes every day, as well as taking more supplements, for example, 10,000 or even 15,000 IUs of vitamin D temporarily until your numbers are up, and then 5,000 is usually sufficient. There are a number of B vitamins that help with lowering your blood pressure. I wouldn't worry too much about taking the isolated B vitamins. I would get a B complex, because if you're only taking, for example, niacin or something like that, then you're overloading your body with one B vitamin and not the others. So my suggestion would be to get a complete B vitamin, and that way you're covering all your bases. Potassium is another supplement that you can take. You don't have to take a lot of potassium. You can just eat potassium-rich foods and it would be sufficient. But for most people, taking a potassium supplement would be beneficial. It's important to get blood work though, and the reason why is especially if you already have high blood pressure and you're taking blood pressure medication, you want to make sure that you know that you're taking something that's right for you, and that would be the case with potassium. The last two are vitamin C and fish oil. Vitamin C helps strengthen our soft tissues as well as our blood vessels, and fish oil has an ability to lower our blood pressure. It also has some other good effects. It's extremely good for our skin. It's good for inflammation, which again contributes to blood pressure, and it helps lower our cholesterol. This is a big one. This is one that I'm going to say should not under any circumstances be controversial, but it is. It just is, and we can't change that. But let's go into it and really dive into this subject. The mental component of high blood pressure. Number one, there's a condition. They actually call it a medical condition called white coat syndrome. And what this means is the moment you go into the doctor's office and you see that blood pressure cuff, your blood pressure skyrockets. And naturally, if you're in the doctor's office and you have high blood pressure in the doctor's office, and the doctor is stressed themselves and doesn't have a lot of time to educate you, then what ends up happening is they go, well, your blood pressure's high, we're going to give you a blood pressure medication, you're going to lower it. And the moment you leave the doctor's office, your blood pressure goes back to normal in your normal life. The problem with this is, the truth is you really don't have high blood pressure that's chronic. What you have is a temporary raise in your blood pressure as if you were running a marathon. And if nobody recognizes this, then you can get some serious problems. And the biggest clue that you have white coat syndrome is that the blood pressure is only high in the doctor's office. It's never high at home. So if you have a good blood pressure machine, and I'll put a link down below, by the way, if you want to know what blood pressure machine I recommend that's accurate and reliable. And in fact, it's the blood pressure machine most doctors have in their office. But nonetheless, if you check your blood pressure at home and it's always normal, and you go into the doctor's office once a year and the blood pressure's high there, it's unlikely that you have high blood pressure. The second thing, and this is very, very important, is that if the doctor gives you medication for high blood pressure and all you have is side effects from the blood pressure medication, and really no benefit, you're in deep trouble. And I'll tell you what's happening is you go to the doctor's office, you have high blood pressure. They give you medication that is strong enough to lower that blood pressure medication. The problem is your blood pressure is normal. Well, that blood pressure medication probably works really well and will drastically drop your blood pressure. So what ends up happening is when you're at home in your normal life and you're taking that medication, the medication is now taking your normal blood pressure and dropping it way below normal. And now you're just having side effects. You're getting dizzy, you're feeling faint, you don't feel good, you're depressed. All these things can happen. So that is a major problem when it comes to white coat syndrome. You need to solve that. But let's talk about the real underlying issue, the thing that no one's talking about. It's this. It's that stress is killing you. You're burning both ends of the candle. You're a type A personality, whatever you want to call it. But you don't handle stress very well. You don't handle criticism very well. And I predict, and I hope I'm wrong, but I predict that the age group that grew up on social media, constantly being judged by social media, trying to keep up with the images that they see on social media, there's going to be a lot of blood pressure problems in the future when these people grow up and hit their 40s and 50s. I hope I'm wrong, but we'll see what happens. There's an old saying called keeping up with the Joneses. And if you're old enough to know what that means, it means that you're essentially stressed out trying to keep up with what your neighbor is doing. If your neighbor bought a new car, you're trying to buy a new car. If the neighbor fixed up their house real nice, you're trying to fix up your house. If the neighbor got a raise, you need to work harder at work and try to get a raise. So you're always competing with the other people in your neighborhood, trying to outdo them. The problem with this is it creates a tremendous amount of mental stress, and that contributes towards high blood pressure. Now, stress has a temporary effect on your blood pressure. As soon as the stressor is gone, or as soon as your attitude changes, the blood pressure goes down. But for most people, their stress levels are at a 10 all the time. All the time. They never change. Well, that's what can have long, damaging effects on our cardiovascular system. So the hard part is, how do you change this? How do you change your mental outlook? There's a book written by Dale Carnegie called How to Stop Worrying and Start Living. It was written, I think, 70, 80 years ago. Again, I'll put a link down below. There's going to be a lot of links down below, so just search for what you want. But It's a fantastic book, and if you've never read that book before, I would encourage you to read it. It's a little old-fashioned. It's very folksy, but it has a lot of good information on it that I think you could benefit from. And I used to be a high-stress person. Some say I still am, but I used to be a high-stress person, and I remember the day that it clicked for me. I was 33 years old, and my father passed away, and it was, of course, devastating because I had a good relationship with my father. And he passed away, and I realized, it was like a weird feeling, but I realized that, wow, I'm the oldest male in the family. I'm next. That was scary. And so I found somehow or another a change of attitude was to stop stressing so much, because life is short. Life is way too short. And the older you get, the shorter life gets. And I found that my attitude really made a difference in how I felt, because I was very much a burning both ends of the candle type of person as well. You could say high achiever, even though I never achieved anything, right? But that's what a high achiever will say, right? So attitude, how do you conduct your day? When problems arise, do the problems flow over you like water off a duck's back, or do you hit 10 at every moment? And so it's a difficult thing to change, and a lot of times I find in my practice when I have patients that have health problems and they're trying to solve them naturally, solving this one is the hardest, because ultimately you can seek professional help, and a professional counselor can really do wonders to help you. But for a lot of people, professional help isn't the answer, and sometimes they just throw drugs at you in addition to that. So if they're just giving you Zoloft and you're just filling a prescription every time you go, that doesn't usually have the best effect on your blood pressure. So try to become a better version of you, and sometimes what you have to do is write down what the better version would actually look like, and keep that on your mirror wherever you brush your teeth every day, or always read that list of what the better version of you might be before you do your deep breathing exercise, before you head out to go for a walk, for example. That would be what I would do if I were in your shoes. But if you have high blood pressure and you're trying to solve it naturally, then this is a component that is just not talked about and never addressed, because it's easy to buy a supplement, but it's hard to sit down and think to yourself, what would a better version of me look like, and how can I try to achieve it? And on a daily basis, trying to become that. Reading books such as Dale Carnegie's book, searching for counseling. These are things that might actually have an effect on your blood pressure, and might have a tremendous effect on your blood pressure. But you gotta work at it, and that's why this is probably the most difficult. All right, number 6, let's cover some special foods that would lower your blood pressure. Now, these are separated from the diet. And the reason why I do this is because these are foods that you may enjoy, but these are foods that you may not enjoy, and you may not like them at all. And some of these foods I particularly like if they're cooked well, but if they're not cooked well or raw, I don't like them one bit. I'm going to cover a number of foods that have, in the literature, significant improvements in blood pressure. And when I say significance, I mean big ones. And for some of them, they last a long time if you eat these foods. The problem is, how do you get them in your diet? Well, that's the challenge. All right, the first food are beets, or beetroot juice. The problem with beets are that, and there's a lot of problems, I don't particularly like the taste. Me personally. You may like them, that's fine. I don't like the taste of beets. To me, no matter how much I clean the beets, or steam the beets, or salt the beets, or pepper the beets, or do whatever it takes to try to make those beets taste good, I have never really smiled when I eat beets. What I do is I will put beets in my smoothies. I will hide beets in other foods so that the beets are going in you, but you're not really tasting them. Now, why should we be eating beets? Beets have nitrates in them, and our body converts these nitrates into nitric oxide, and nitric oxide is a biggie. Now, what the nitric oxide does is it helps dilate our blood vessels. And did you know that a glass of beetroot juice will significantly lower our blood pressure within a couple hours, and those effects will last 24 hours? That is amazing. Of all the foods that I'm mentioning, that one is big. So if you can somehow find a way to get beets into your diet, or just drink a glass of beetroot juice, or do whatever it takes, put it in smoothies to get those things in you, it'll have significant effects. Now, there is a problem with beets, and they have oxalates, and oxalates are a problem for a select few of groups of people. Now, if you tend to develop kidney stones, then beets aren't right for you. There's something to consider when it comes to beets, though, is that if you have a tendency towards developing kidney stones and the doctor has told you don't eat beets, the question was, how many beets were you eating before you had kidney stones? I find it interesting that people who have never eaten beets or spinach, which also have oxalates, develop kidney stones. And we blame beets and we blame spinach for causing kidney stones, but the majority of people who have kidney stones probably weren't eating pounds and pounds of that type of food. So just be aware that there's a little bit of controversy over whether beets contribute to kidney stones. I'm going to make the argument that if you have a tendency towards developing kidney stones, then definitely stay away from them. But if you're just following stuff on the internet and you heard that, beets cause kidney stones and you're afraid, then I'm telling you that it's extremely unlikely that you have the genetic tendency towards forming kidney stones from beets, because the reality is, how many beets can you really eat? The next food is spinach. Spinach, I love cooked spinach. If you take 5 pounds of spinach and put it in a frying pan with olive oil, red pepper flakes, garlic, salt, pepper, I'm yours. You could put anything next to that spinach and I will eat the spinach first. If you've never tried that recipe, I'll put a link down below where I show you how I cook the spinach. It is so delicious if you like that sort of thing. Raw spinach? No. Could hide some raw spinach in a salad, but I still don't like it. I could think it, but I still don't want to do it. But why spinach? Because spinach has nitrates. Nitrates become nitric oxide. Nitric oxide dilates our blood vessels. Blood pressure goes down. Yada, yada, yada. You also have the lobster bisque. So if you can get spinach in your diet, wonderful. Again, with smoothies, I tend to take raw spinach, throw it into my smoothies. You don't even taste it. I give it to my kids. They don't even taste it. They're probably not going to even watch this video. So kids, you're eating spinach and you didn't even know. Gotcha. All right, garlic. Now, again, I've mentioned already, I love garlic, especially with the cooked spinach. Fantastic. The more raw the garlic is, the better it is for you. So if you're just going to cook the garlic and kill the garlic, it's still garlic, so it's health food. There's very few clinically obese people that are eating too much garlic. So don't worry about garlic gaining weight and all these things that you hear on the internet. Here's the important thing. Garlic can significantly lower your blood pressure, and that's why you want to get garlic in you. It's difficult to eat raw garlic. I have done it before where you just take raw garlic, pop it in your mouth and swallow it just to get the garlic in you. Some people do complain about garlic smell, and that's a problem. That's definitely a problem. So you need to eat it during a time when you're not going to be around a lot of people. You could eat it on a weekend or something and things like that. The other thing is that some people will take garlic capsules, so it has the allicin in it, which is supposed to help lower your cholesterol and your blood pressure. I find that the more natural you can eat something, the better. So if you were to give me real garlic and a garlic tablet, I'm probably going to choose the real garlic if I'm going to say which one is healthier, but that's still probably benefiting you. All right, if you like Cokes, Pepsis, and coffee, you need to stop that. Start drinking green tea. Green tea is something that can significantly lower our blood pressure, so it's very simple. You could put it in a thermos and drink it throughout the day. I particularly, and it's just a taste issue, I find that green tea I can tolerate for a period of time, but I kind of get tired of it. So I don't drink a lot of green tea myself, but when I recommend it to patients, some patients really like green tea, and I tell them, drink at your heart's content. Just stay away from the Pepsis and Cokes. The last special food that we're going to discuss is ginger. Ginger can have a great effect on your blood pressure. It will significantly lower your blood pressure. I like ginger with certain types of foods, but not with others. So I cannot swallow a whole ginger. It's just a thing for me. I don't like it. But if you like ginger, then eat as much ginger as you possibly can. It will lower your blood pressure. If you combine all these special foods together, they will have a tremendous effect on your blood pressure. All right, so let's summarize this program. I know I threw a lot at you. I appreciate you for watching the entire video, and I hope that you've taken a lot of notes because this can really save your life. Did you know that 64% of all strokes are attributed to high blood pressure, and 49% of all heart attacks are associated with high blood pressure? So I really feel as though that just throwing medication at people is saving lives, but improving their health is really saving their life. If you do both, for many people, you can get off a lot of medications. For some people, it's just too late. You're too late to the party. You should still try to improve your health, but some people just need medications. It's the way it goes. But the easiest solution to starting, just to get your foot wet, is to start walking. Even if it's 6 minutes, 10 minutes every single day, develop the habit of starting to walk. If you want to ride a bicycle, great, man. If you want to do a treadmill or you want to do a rowing machine, go for it. But the cheapest, easiest, simplest solution is to start exercising and start developing that habit. After the person has developed that habit and they start walking every day, then you can start talking about diet and start trying to change their diet. Whatever extreme diet they want to choose, I'm okay with, because they really do. They all work to some degree. But as I talk to patients, I try to get them to think long term, and is this a diet that you can sustain for the next 30 years? Is this a diet that you enjoy the food, that gives you some freedom to have some fun socially? So then their diet is under control. Then you have them start doing a couple minutes of daily breathing, teaching them how to breathe properly, teaching them how to relax, how not to hyperventilate. Breathe in through the nose, out through the mouth, 30 deep breaths. It takes 5 minutes. It helps you. A lot of people have stress and they really love the deep breathing. So now you've got someone who's doing cardiovascular exercise, they're improving their diet, they're doing deep breathing exercises. That's it. But then you start, bam, taking it up a notch. You start taking some supplements. You may start taking magnesium supplements at night. Suddenly you're sleeping better. You're taking vitamin D, you're taking vitamin C, you're taking B vitamins. You're taking some fish oil, and that's having a positive effect on your cardiovascular system. And then the big one, you're controlling your attitude. You're changing your attitude. You just read a book and it really kind of altered how you think about stress. Guess what's happened after you've finished this program? Your blood pressure, the systolic and the diastolic, has gone down. This is something you can sustain. Talk to your doctor. Maybe you've been on some medications. Maybe now that your blood pressure is approaching normal, that maybe you can alter the dosage or the medications themselves. I wish you the best. I hope this video has helped you. Again, I appreciate you for watching this video in its entirety. If you have any questions, you're allowed to ask in the comments. If you yourself have changed your lifestyle, give someone else hope. Tell your story. Tell the story in the comments so other people can read it, because other people read the comments, and if there's any questions, I will try to get to them to answer your questions in the comments. Thanks for watching.